It is often associated with love triangles.
And vampires. Vampires and love triangles.
Yes.
Vampires and love triangles.
Yes, vampires and love triangles, including a love triangle with a vampire.
With a vampire, right.
Say, hey, black people fall in love. I fell in love every day in high school.
You were lovesick? You were a lovesick? You were the lovesick.
Come on, I had so many crushes, it was ridiculous.
Hi, and welcome to Entertainment Weekly's Around the Table with the writers of Blackout. My name is Dhonielle Clayton, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Tiffany D. Jackson, Angie Thomas, Nic Stone, Nicola Yoon, and Ashley Woodfolk, so that we can discuss our fabulous new book. First of all, I'm just so excited to get to talk to some of my best friends about a thing that we created together. And I would love one of you, not me, to tell the origin story of how I roped you into this.
I can do it. Dhonielle, the little go-getter, always has really excellent ideas. And last summer during the pandemic, we were all pretty down and out. Dhonielle has a niece, and Dhonielle's niece was bothered by the lack of representation in certain things that she was seeing on Netflix. And so Dhonielle had this idea, what if we all came together to write a novel about 6 different couples, and it takes place during a blackout in New York City? And we were like, okay. And so we all write our story, and it was very soul-soothing. And then it became this super huge deal that I don't think any of us were like expecting. And we're really excited now because, you know, it's fun.
It was a lot of fun to be like, hey, Angie. Hey, Ashley. Hey, Nikki. Because I was like, let me just lure them into this fun trap, because it's very different than all of our collective work, right? Like, and I would love for us to talk about, besides Nicola Yoon, Queen of Love. I mean, I was nervous to write a love story in front of Nicola Yoon.
You guys, I mean, you know, you write stories about people just connecting. So then, you know, it's easy. It's all the same, right? We just had some kissing now. That's all.
Your kissing scenes are so good. And so that's why I was feeling nervous about it. But everyone's story is so different, and everyone has a different relationship to New York. It's set in New York over the course of one night in a blackout, and you get to follow each character and see where they end up. And I would love for each of you to sort of talk about your relationship to New York, your relationship to wanting to write about love stories. Like, we have a real New Yorker, you know, Tiffany and Nikki. I'm sort of a fake New Yorker. I've been there 12 years, but wasn't born and raised. So let's talk about the city a little bit.
I always wanted to write, I always want to write about my city, right? Because I'm so in love with New York. I'm so in love with Brooklyn. I'm so in love with the people here and everything. And, you know, my family's from here. I'm third generation now. We're talking. One of the cool things about doing Blackout is I immediately thought of some of our first blackouts that we had here. And one of the first ones was in the 1970s. And that was a crucial one that my family still talks about to this day. So it was fun to kind of go back and do that. I admit that, you know, I write thrillers and horror, and the idea of writing a romance, I was like, you sure? You know, I tried everything, and they were not having it. So the last thing I kind of tried, especially when when Dee and Nick and everyone was sort of suggesting this whole idea, I was like, oh, so it's kind of like Love Actually. It's kind of like all these movies that I've watched before. And I said, oh, so we got to break it up. And that's one of the best parts about taking, you know, particularly my characters literally walk from Harlem to Brooklyn. And if you're from here, if you've ever lived here, or hell, if you look at a map, you know that is a long journey. And so that was probably the best part about kind of doing something like this, right? Is to actually go through and see places and re-fall in love, if that's a word. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that happens when you see a lot of movies too set in New York is that there are no Black people in it. There will be so many scenes. And you're like, is it New York City? Because there are no Black people here. And there are so many Black people in New York. And so, I mean, I think that was one of the things too, just, you know, getting to populate the city the way it's really populated and not the way it's populated in movies. I think was really fun for us.
I'm also a fake New Yorker. I've been here for probably 12 years too, 10 to 12 years, something around there. Yeah, it was just really, really fun to think about the different ways that someone could fall in love in New York. I think that even though this city is huge, it's one of the biggest cities in the world, you always find yourself bumping into the same people, regardless of where you go, which is hilarious to me. And I don't understand the chemistry of the city and why it works that way, but it's so true. You can ask anyone. You could be from a totally different neighborhood, end up somewhere else, and you will bump into someone that you always bump into. And just thinking about the serendipity of the city and like how often love happens because of these like, you know, bumping into each other kind of moments. I think that was really fun to play around with, and how we had all of our different characters sort of running into people that they didn't expect to run into in all these different places.
I want to drag Angie in first because I was like, girl, I know every time she comes to New York, she's like, oh no.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, no. And she was like, what are we gonna do? I said, look, we gonna drag you into the city. Just bring your Jackson self onto New York. What is your relationship to the city as a person who doesn't live there and as like a true Southerner, like basically my family?
Yeah, I'm a real Southerner. You know, my first time to New York was like right around the time, before The Hate U Give came out. That was my first time in New York City. And I remember being on the plane and approaching Manhattan and being amazed just from above. There's nothing like the view of New York City from an airplane. There is nothing like it. And then being overwhelmed when I walk out of the airport, because New Yorkers, y'all are a whole different breed. Like, you really are. But still, there's something so magical about the city, and so magical about the possibilities. And you don't get that everywhere. There's literally no place in the world like New York. That's a cliche phrase, but it's so true. There's no place in the world like it. And it feels like anything is just about possible there. So getting a chance to write this story about these little Southern kids coming to New York where anything is possible, it was a great opportunity. Although I had to ask a lot of questions about, where they supposed to go? I don't know how to get around New York. I don't know. Central Park from what's the other park? I just know, they got a couple parks, but
Andrew be working on the show. She'd be like, wait, where? What is this park? There's this park on the map here. Like, where are we? Like, it was so much fun to watch someone learn New York and fall in love with like the, certain aspects of New York while writing a story about love on a tour bus. Like, legit. Sorry, Angie.
So, like, Angie's, like, the true Southerner, and I'm, like, the Southern city girl, because I live in Atlanta, right? So, like, I'm as Southern can be, but I'm also very city-oriented. But New York is, like, that annoying cousin who you want to hang out with when you want to have a good time, but, like, then she got to go, right? So, like, I'll go to New York, and I'm serious. Like, I'll go, I'm like, okay, let's turn up, and then, okay, now I got to go home. And so it was interesting to me, because I did write a story on the part of New York that I'm actually most familiar with, and that's the subway, right? Because, like, when I go to New York, I'm always, like, I do love utilizing the subway. So that was actually kind of fun, writing this story that took place in this very closed area. It was a challenge, too. Would y'all say the same thing? Like, having to write a story in such a singular setting was challenging for me.
Nic, you were saying how much of it was a challenge to write a story in a container. Each one of us, besides Tiff, had a container.
My container was a subway car. Angie's was a bus. Ashley, yours is an assisted living facility. Nikki, yours is a taxi cab. Dhonielle's is the library. And so, like, even within those settings, there's a lot of ability to move, but like me and Angie, of course, the two who are not New Yorkers, we get the most confined space. So it was just really interesting trying to fill in backstory so that you're just not sitting on the subway for 9,000 words.
It's wild because you did get the most New York stuff.
Well, thank you.
The most New York of the New York stories, the subway, but you did an amazing job.
I tried, friends. I did.
It is interesting thinking about how we were able to bring both the city alive and each little fragment. And that's what New York is to me. It's little small pieces of a huge pie, and connect everything together. through the lens of love. And I would love to talk about sort of what was important to you when writing about Black teens in love. Did you draw upon the love stories in your, you know what I mean, in your past? Why was it important? I mean, I came to you and was like, we need love stories. And like, I was a tyrant about it, but I'm so curious about why it was important to you to showcase Black teens falling in love.
I could say for me, especially as a girl who grew up here, and also I live surrounded by like 4 different high schools, I see teens all the time. And they're always like, you know, they're holding hands, they're walking through the park. They literally ride the subway like back and forth, because where else can they hang out? New York is such like a place where, you know, we have to grow up really fast here. And so when you grow up fast and you fall in love fast, there's this energy that happens with that you sort of draw in from the city. So writing about teens like actually in love and like, you know, sort of the ways they have to like even get a chance to like hold hands like on the subway or hold hands walking through the park or hang out in front of the library. Like these are the places that, you know, teenagers have to find and have those moments, quality moments where they fall in love. And so I think it's important that, you know, we don't have cars here, or like teens aren't like driving at 16 here. We can't drive until we're 18 here. So it's important for us to kind of like show like, yeah, we could still have love. We're not like, you know, making out in the backseat of a car, but, you know, we'll make out on the subway.
Hilarious, right?
There's so many more people on the subway to see. Yeah.
I read some article or like saw something, I can't even remember when, but it was talking about when you live in a city like New York, how much of your life is spent outside or like going from one location to another. So much of your life is spent traveling, right? And I think that is really, I don't know. I feel like there's a parallel between that and just like what it's like to be Black. Like you're always sort of on the move in a way. You're always going to the next thing, going to the next place, you're hustling, right? And I feel like that's something that is very alive and well in New York. And I think when you're thinking of love stories in terms of the trajectory, the movement, I feel like New York just goes so well hand in hand with not only being Black, but also being young and also falling in love. And I don't know, I thought it was really fun to try to bring all of those pieces together. I think another thing that was really important to me when telling the story is to show the innocence of Black love, because so often we're not, you know, Black kids are not allowed to be kids, and they're not given the same level of, they're not allowed to be innocent. They're not allowed to be young. They, you know, look at us and they see us as women and as men way before we are actually women and men. And so I thought that, you know, us writing this book, this collection of these really sweet, young, youthful stories, you know, and all of them are so innocent, is really important, especially with everything that's happening right now.
And each one of your love stories is so different from the other. I mean, partly because I was like, please write this, like, let's do some tropes, which are fun because a lot of Black kids never get to sort of play or like see themselves in certain tropes, which are important for that kind of representation. And so I would love for you to each tell us a little bit, give me a sneak peek and give everyone a sneak peek of like the conflict between your two beloveds in your stories. And was it fun? Was it challenging to write?
All right, so my story is called Seymour and Grace, and it's about Seymour and Grace. And it was so much fun to do because I love when you trap people who are going to fall in love in a small space together. It's like one of my favorite things. You know, they're sort of trapped in a place they cannot get away from each other. Seymour is this really philosophical kid. Grace is getting over an ex-boyfriend and not really wanting to pay attention to this ride driver. You know, it's like Uber, but it's ride, R-Y-D-E. And they're trapped in the car and he's winning her over and he thinks that she's the cutest thing in the world, but she's still thinking about this old boyfriend. And then, you know, the car breaks down and then they have to take a walk through the city. And the tropes there are, you know, they're sort of being trapped in a small space. I wanted to talk a little bit about what, you know, Ash was saying before too, about love stories and Black kids. The thing is, we don't see that many stories with Black kids falling in love. We just don't. Like the big romantic comedies, where are the Black kids? Or where are the Black people falling in love, right? There's always like, there's the sassy best friend, or the supporting character, but they're not the main character, right? They're the ones that are swoony and sweet and vulnerable, and the one that gets the boy or the girl or whoever. So I think that we all really wanted to do that, right? We really wanted to say, hey, Black people fall in love. I fell in love every day in high school.
You were lovesick. You were a lovesick. You were the lovesick.
Come on, I had so many crushes. It was ridiculous.
I definitely had a lot of crushes. I definitely wrote people's names in my notebook and like secret pining.
Did you do that?
That's a good segue, because like that was my trope. The crush thing was like the secret crush, right? And so I will say I was very deliberate about my story choices. I am a woman who lives in a house full of dudes, and I write a lot of books with boy protagonists. And so like I wanted to lean into that a little bit in writing my story. There's so much that gets kind of unveiled over time, right? So you see this person kind of coming into themselves as the story progresses, and they're trapped on this subway car. And that's all I'm going to say, because I do think that like the fun thing about writing this particular story is that, Tiffany was saying how as a person who grows up in New York, you have to grow up pretty early, you have to grow up quickly. And I think that with that, there come these expectations, and boys tend to fall into these kind of toxically masculine spaces very early. And having one boy that's trying to work his way out of that was really important to me in my story.
I love it. I wanted to do a story set in my favorite place. I'm a former librarian, so I was like, I have to do the library. That was immediate. I mean, that's literally how the story came. The whole like interconnected novel came to me because I was like, what if two kids were stuck in the library, right? And the lights are out, and they're just surrounded by all of these books. And I wanted to do best friends, childhood friends, to figuring out if there's something more, because I'm very interested in that sort of idea of, can you fall in love with a friend, right? Can you love a friend? Can you have a successful relationship with a friend when you know all there is to know? Everyone tells you love's about discovery, and it's about you meet someone and you fall in and you're just figuring everyone out. And it's like, what about someone you know, like a good pair of shoes that you always wear? Like, is there still room for love there? And I wanted to explore that and write a protagonist, a girl who has trouble like verbalizing that she like loves someone, maybe thinly veiled autobiography. I don't know, but that was me in high school, and probably me now, where I'm like, I don't love you, I don't like you. And then it's like, oh no, type of kid. That was definitely me, where I was like, I'll write about it in my notebook, but I'm never going to say it out loud. And so it was really fun to combine my two loves, books, the library, and also seeing two kids try to figure it out. And if they have, you know what I mean, what it takes to like take that leap. Love is about risk. Some of us take that risk and some of us don't. And I was a kid that was terrified, an adult who was terrified. So
I got to do a love triangle.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I like mess. YA is often associated with love triangles. Like, let's just be honest for a second. It is often associated with love triangles.
And vampires. Vampires and love triangles.
Yes.
Vampires and love triangles.
Yes, vampires and love triangles, including a love triangle with the vampire.
With the vampire, right.
Because that's what was popular, That's what YA is associated with. But we don't get to see Black kids in love triangles. A Black girl with two boys that she has feelings for. We don't get to see that nearly enough. So, when Dhonielle told me, I want you to do a love triangle, me being a person who loves drama, I'm like, yes, I will take it. Drama's my thing. So getting to put this Black girl, but also there's something very liberating about seeing a Black girl on page who is the object of affection twice. When usually Black girls, we don't get to see them as the love, the one that the boys are pining for once, let alone twice. So, it was very liberating and freeing to write it to a degree.
And I love that. And she's so special, right? Like each one of our characters has something special about them. And I love that people are going to be able to read and be like, oh my God, that was me. That was me in high school. Or like, that is like, or that's what I want. I want to feel that way. I think Tiffany has the hardest one. True.
I was thinking about it. I was like, I mean, I guess it was kind of hard in a sense. So mine is sort of the kind of the spine of the book. The two kids take a journey from Harlem to Brooklyn. And I guess the trope that I'm under is exes stuck together, which is the hilarious thing because that actually happened in the most recent blackout in New York. I think that was the 2003 blackout, where a lot of people were stuck. They couldn't use their credit cards. They couldn't use their cell phones, really weren't working. And so everyone had to sort of like figure out and work together, even if they didn't like each other. And so you saw a lot of different people, warring people out in the street trying to like direct traffic. Even my dad, who is a street vendor in Times Square, he was like giving things away. Like, so it was so much of the energy of New York where when, things like blackouts happen or mass casualties or something like that happen, we all very much come together. And that's actually what happened with my kids, is that there was this emergency and there are two exes that were stuck at the same place and they have to work together to get back home. And you sort of follow their journey and follow how they became exes in the first place. And for me, that was actually kind of hard because it was also like opening up my own wounds and saying like looking at yourself and looking at your flaws in the relationship, because it really takes two to tango. And I think that was important, especially for kids, to see that, it's not always like his fault or her fault, it's both your fault. You both come to the table. And so how can you come to the table differently and bring more communication, especially if you at one point loved that person. And so that was sort of the beauty of going through all of that. And I will say, just as a caveat, because I know that mine was more like the traveling kids versus everyone else seemed more contained story. I will say that as a New Yorker, I felt that we all very much nailed all of the stories. I can't tell you how many times I've read stories where, they'll talk about carpet on the subway. And I'm like, there is no carpet on the subway.
Oh no, could you imagine if there was? There is.
There's carpet on the metro in DC.
On the metro in DC.
So it's like there's things where like I could see the differences. Even when I'm watching television shows, I hate to see like people like dressed differently. And I'm like, no one would ever wear that in New York. Like, what are you doing? And so I feel like I'm very much a New York snob. So the fact that I of course was like fine tooth combing everyone, like, okay, yeah, okay, yes. So it almost like it actually worked in our favor to keep you guys stuck in a place where you can massage the story and still make it its own, and it still be really beautiful and very much like show like kids falling in love. Like you said, we don't really get to see that often. We don't get to see, these charming, delicious stories, that kids can aspire to. The rest of us are aspiring to vampires and werewolves, and
I'm waiting for my vampire.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need black vampires too.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for a black girl to bring home an Edward and see how her daddy reacts.
Oh, it's game over. Goodbye.
I need
but please, diamonds in sunlight, whatever. Bring home the diamonds, it's fine.
Diamonds, leave the diamonds and you leave. Ashley, you gotta talk about yours.
Hey, my story is set in a brownstone that has been converted to an assisted living facility for old people. But of course, it's not about the old people. It is about two girls. One of them is there visiting her grandpa, and the other one is a girl who has a therapy certified pit bull who she brings to the old people's home once a week. And it's not the normal day that she's there. And the main character of my story, Nella, had been avoiding the normal day that the other girl is there on purpose because she was afraid that if she met her, she would fall in love. And of course, that's what happens. But the main conflict of the story is that Nella's grandfather has lost his favorite photograph of her grandma. And they are searching the entire brownstone looking for it, going in and out of rooms, going through all the different floors, looking for this photograph. And as they're traveling with the little puppy with them, during some parts, they start having conversations and getting to know each other, and things happen. So
it's like insta-love and at its best, which
yes.
I love.
Yeah. I think my trope was love at first sight.
I can't get enough of that trope in general. And I never see Black teens in YA that usually get that, where I'm like, come on, don't you have instant love? Don't you have love at first sight? Come on. People hate on instant love. Instant love is the best. I love instant love. They really
hate on it so hard.
But I think they hate on it because a lot of people who do it don't pull it off well.
That's
so they
valid.
don't like have the right, like they don't have enough stakes, or like the characters aren't super great. So guys, I did a good job.
You did. You did an excellent job. Everyone has done a great job. And it feels like one cohesive book where each chapter you're learning more about some of the characters you've met and some of the characters to come and how they all weave together.
I mean, I guess I could say, like, you know, it's, so I come from a TV and film background. So when I look at books, I very much break it up into scenes, into productions, into acts. And so when I looked at all of our stories, I was like, okay, this needs to follow this. Like, how do we drive down and through and like hammer down the point that, you know, kids can fall in love anywhere. But I also feel like, you know, we should, like, you know, big up ourselves, because at the end of the day, like, we're very talented women. Like, we understand what tropes are, we understand story structure, we understand plot. And so in order to just do that in our own little sections and then just sort of sew them together in, you know, small spaces, I think that felt like nothing. So to me, I'm like, you know, our Wu-Tang book really came together quite flawlessly.
Yes, it is. I think it also helps that, like, we're not ego.
We need to figure out how to make a B.
Like a
Wu-Tang is for the children.
Wu-Tang for the kids. The cleaned up version for the kids.
Right.
Absolutely. And the sewing is was my favorite part. Being able to read everyone's sections and be like, let's put a little thing here. And then thank God you were all team players when I came back and said, can you add these 3 mentions to your story? Can you see this? Can you drop this name? Like, I became the annoying one.
But it wasn't annoying.
It was
like,
not.
I think, I think that exactly what you said about being team players, like, none of us are ego driven. Like, we really just wanted to write a good book. And so the trust that we have in each other and the love we have for each other, I think, was kind of the driving force behind the book in the first place. And that definitely shines through. Like, when you read the book, it's like, oh, okay. Because it is so seamless, you're like, wow, they must like really like each other or something. Because, like, I don't really know a whole lot of people who could co-author and it come out this way with this many of us, you know? Because it's not an anthology, right? Like, we've talked about how it's a novel, like, it's genuinely a novel. And I'm excited for people to see what friendship can do, what friendship can make.
I mean, I also think emotionally we all were in the same place, right? I mean, we were all stuck in our houses where it was the summer of George Floyd and all this stuff happening, right? We just wanted to say something. We wanted to bring joy into the world. And I think we were all at that same place. And I think that was so magical about it too, you know, I think we all have the same sensibility. Like, we want to make these stories. And I think that really helped.
And I feel like you can sense how much we love Black teens and Black kids and Black culture. Like, it's all there. And it's literally everything I've ever wanted. Like, everything I ever wanted for my teen reader self and everything I ever wanted as a librarian to give to my Black kids. It's a book I wish I had 10, 15 years ago. It's one I hope that kids are like, yo, this is so dope, you know, like, oh, this is me. I'm Kareem, you know, or I'm Kayla, you know, that they can find their little piece and figure out who they are in love, because we never get opportunities like that. One of the last questions I think that we can sort of wrap our heads around is, what do we hope this book does? If you could design how people, you know what I mean, how it comes into the world, and how it makes people feel. What do you hope? What are your hopes for how do you think it'll impact publishing, other books, kids, librarians? What are you thinking?
I'm hoping it'll humanize Black kids for other people, like, in so many ways. You know, racism, homophobia, sexism, all of these things are about dehumanization, and just getting to see the same people you're seeing their names becoming hashtags, getting to see them falling in love. I'm hoping that it'll be like, oh, wait, you know, I want people to take a pause. And the people who are like the kids in the book, I want them to look and be like, oh, I get to be more than what I'm seeing these people saying I can be. I get to be human.
And I love how vulnerable the characters are, you know, like, they're just real. I mean, and we all feel this way. So we know it's true, right? Black kids can be anything. And just the fact that, you know, media sort of shows you one slice for the most part. Black kids, like any kid, you can be anything, right? We should be allowed the full measure of our humanity. Everyone falls in love. these kids do too, right? Like, why wouldn't they? And why don't we see more of these, right? I love what Angie said about it being a love letter, because it really is a love letter to that idea that you can be anything and you are worthy of love, absolutely.
I don't have anything else to say.
That's how I feel. I want this book to replace every book that dehumanizes Black kids, that makes us look like that we don't fall in love, or that, we are coming from toxic love. Like, I want kids to pick up this book and it be for them, in a sense. I grew up reading a lot of love stories that were for grown women. So I grew up reading like things and saying to myself, like, marriage looks trash to me, but this does not look fun at all. So I want.
You should not have been reading Waiting to Exhale, Tiffany.
I mean, I'm just saying. This is what I grew up feeling. These are my feelings. So I want now kids to see these stories and see how, like, how exes could maybe like work together or still be friends, how you could fall in love with the subway, how you could fall in love at first sight. I want them to see all these things and see that it's 100% possible, because it does happen to them. I want them to see themselves on the page and see, particularly for New York kids, I want New York kids to see themselves on the page. We didn't get a lot of that. We still don't get a lot of that.
I didn't see a Black girl getting kissed on the page by anyone until I was well into my adulthood. It was maybe 2 years ago. So in this book, there are several Black girls getting kissed. I think actually, Nikki, it might have been your book was where I first saw it. Like,
no, for real.
And like, that is so crazy to me. And I love that kind of stuff when I was younger. Like, I read all the Sarah Destin novels. Like, that is what I was absolutely into. And yeah, you just really didn't see it very often. Or, I mean, in my case, I didn't see it at all. And so I think to have a book that is, mainstream, a book that is going to be in bookstores and not just, available to download somewhere, and not that there's anything wrong with those books. Those books are amazing. But the fact that this will be so widely available and it will be in a place where anyone could bump into it, I think that is really, really important. And I hope that it really changes things, even if the only thing it changes is that Black girls get to see themselves being the object of affection.
It's gutting to think about the fact that you never got to see someone who looked like you as the object of affection, or to be kissed, and what that might have done to all of our self-esteems as we are emerging, you know what I mean? Learning about relationships, learning about love, learning about how we're supposed to connect, right? And we never get to have that experience on the page, and how different we would have been at 15 and 16 had we gotten to read Blackout and being like, yeah, I deserve a love triangle. Where is my love triangle at my high school, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, or where's my love at first sight? I'm trying, all of that.
Where's my mess?
We deserve the mess too, I would love. It's the greatest gift that I think I wanted to give my 15-year-old niece, is that you deserve all the love stories. You deserve a shot at love. You deserve to even think about yourself as a person worthy of love and affection and attention by other people in your community, by other, so yeah. And I just want to thank you for going down this rabbit hole with me, and accepting the challenge. It has been the greatest thing that I think I will have ever created. Has been amazing. And we're leaving something for our kids, to really just, show them that we love them. Blackout forever. So is this our album?
All right.
What is our Wu-Tang? What is our name? We need our name. What is our rap group?
I don't know,
Angie.
girl. What you mean?
Angie, what's our rap group called? Like, what are we gonna be?
Outs.
Wait,
Out.
what did you say?
Outs. We the outs.
I love that. I like that.
I mean, I kind of like it.
I kind of like the outs. Yo, side note, this is a book that comes out on June 22nd, by the way. Everybody make sure you go get it. Just saying.
Like,
Fine, yes,
yeah.
buy the book.
The
And we
outs
are
is out.
And we out.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh. Thanks for watching. This has been Entertainment Weekly's Around the Table with the writers of Blackout. Make sure to pick up our book, Blackout, on June 22nd. We're out.